All right, next question, folks. We have seen under this administration the drawdown of combat troops in Iraq. Should there be a timetable for withdrawing troops from Afghanistan? Why or why not? And Mr. Reed, you have 2 minutes.
You know, I'm glad the Iraq situation is coming to an end. I'm glad our troops are coming home, and I'm glad, and I stand for the position that it was a success. The bottom line in Afghanistan is I support the mission in Afghanistan because the mission has not been completed. We are still dealing with the terroristic threat in Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in that area of the world. And until that mission is completed, and that mission would be completed as articulated and confirmed by our military leaders in the field, then I believe it is necessary for us to be in that part of the world and then continue our efforts there. So we don't support arbitrary timetables. We don't support any type of schedule of removal of troops because, and I'm sure Matt can articulate this just as well, is that, you know, with the military, you don't want to give away your schedule because then you're giving away one of your military advantages, and that is your unpredictability. And so we stand for the support of the troops as they're in Afghanistan. We also stand for our mission in Afghanistan on the concept that we are building alliances. We are building alliances with our friends in Pakistan, with our friends in Afghanistan. We're building alliances with people in that part of the world that are going to have to be utilized down the road because this terroristic threat is not going to go away. This terroristic threat may be annihilated in Afghanistan with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda being destroyed. But the threat, until the ideological war is over, and that's been going on for thousands of years, that threat is going to keep reappearing. And we want to make sure that we have those strong alliances so that when we have to deploy our troops, so that we fight them there and not here, so we do not suffer another 9/11, that we have those relationships and those alliances that our troops can then go in and take on that national security threat.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Zeller, you have 2 minutes.
I got my combat boots on from Afghanistan. My cousin Brian is a Marine. He's in Helmand Province. This issue is personal. It's personal because when I think about withdrawal, I don't just think about my cousin Brian. I think about my interpreter. I think about his family. I think about his newborn son. I think about all the good he did. I think about the 18 million Afghans who have actually signed up to be our ally. And I think about the genocide that would ensue if we were to leave that country prematurely. Now, what does that mean? I think our end state goal, and I actually criticize both the Bush administration and the current Obama administration for never actually saying what our end state goal should be, but here's what my belief is. Our end state goal should be Afghanistan should be a state that, one, respects the rights of its citizens, and two, does not threaten us or its neighbors. I don't think we have a partner in Karzai that's capable of doing that, but I would say that about any leader in Afghanistan because I don't think the government is structured to succeed. What I would like to see is another debate on a discussion on what another end state goal should be, and this is a third one. We need to stop terrorism. Now, terrorism is a tool of the desperate. You can't just say, I'm going to stop terrorism. You have to stop the ideology that inspires someone to use terrorism, which means, for me, educating Afghan kids. That's why I handed out over 250,000 pens and pencils and school supplies in Afghanistan. We had to prevent Afghan children from becoming future members of the Taliban. And to do that, it takes literacy. Because literacy allows one to access the marketplace of ideas. It allows one to think for themselves. And in Afghanistan, it also literally provides them with an income. My interpreter got paid more than the senior member of the Afghan army simply because he could read or write English. That should be our goal. It should be prevent today's children from becoming tomorrow's terrorists. But to do that, it's going to take a presence. And if we actually want to say we stand for something in this country, it means making that commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller. Mr. Reed, you have 1 minute for your debate.
And this all goes back to what we started about. We stood up because America right now is $14 trillion in debt. The American dream, the American way of life cannot die. It cannot go bankrupt because this is exactly what we're talking about. The American way of life is the way of life that will counter terrorism. It will counter oppressive governments because as I've talked to so many people on the campaign trail that have just immigrated here. You know, many people have come here and are just first generation. Come here because it's the American dream. It's the American way of life. And as someone had indicated to me on the trail, it's becoming no longer the American dream, it's the American scheme. because they're trying to figure out the entitlement programs, they're trying to figure out ways around the system. We have to get our fiscal house in order so that the American way of life is here to demonstrate to the world that terrorism, the tool of the desperate, as Matt says, is not a tool that can be used because they don't want to live that life any longer. They want to live
Thank you,
an
Mr.
American
Reed.
life.
Mr. Zeller, you have 1 moment.
I've seen the private sector unleash in terms of national security. It was the 150,000 private contractors that are roaming Afghanistan. It's one area which I don't think the private sector should have any business in playing in. I don't think we need mercenaries. I think we need that money to go to soldiers and body armor. As I said, it's a personal issue for me. It really is. But this is the type of leadership I can bring to Congress. I'm the only person up here who has this on-the-ground truth experience. Imagine that for a second. You'd actually have an Afghan war vet making Afghan policy. I'm going to be the best educated member of Congress on this subject. I lived it for a year. I've lost friends there. This is something that is deeply personal, but I also have a profound understanding, and I'm probably the only person nationally that gets to say that because there aren't a lot of other Afghan war vets that I know of that are actually running for Congress.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zeller. Going now to the issue of health care. Due respect, Mr. Reed, I will refer to it as healthcare reform. I know you have another name for it.
I'm sure I'll use another name.
I'm sure that you will. Do you support or do you oppose President Obama's healthcare plan? Mr. Zeller, we will begin with you. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would have voted for it. I got a lot of problems with how we pay for the 24 million people we just threw into an insurance system without ever addressing costs. I had a real problem with the fact that we never did any actual discussion on preventative medicine as opposed to reactionary care, which is what we currently have, or standardization of electronic records, which I think would have actually driven down costs. But I'm not going to repeal it because we have this wonderful process in our Constitution called amending. And I think this thing is primed for amending. We repeal the thing, we're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because it accomplished 4 things that everyone in this room and listening at home tonight agrees on. 1, the insurance company can't deny you coverage based on the pre-existing conditions. Cleft lip and palate, type 1 diabetes, that's a pre-existing condition. 2, you can't have your coverage stripped from you as you're being enrolled into the ER. I've talked to a lot of people in this district, and that's happened on more occasions than one, and what people find is that they need a heart transplant, they need a quadruple bypass, and yet they're holding a bill for $100,000 because their insurance company decided not to honor their commitment. 3rd thing, coverage for children up to the age of 26. Please, if there's a parent in the audience who's opposed to that, stand up. I really want to meet you. 4th thing is that we finally closed the Medicare donut hole for seniors. I think those are things that are worth keeping, and I have still yet to hear a plan on what we're going to do if we get rid of that addresses those 4 things that we all agree upon.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller. Mr. Reed, you have 2 minutes.
I think our position on Obamacare is well known. We stand for the repeal of Obamacare. And we stand for repeal because, to me, Obamacare has missed the complete mark in the healthcare industry. As we spent these miles, this time on the road, we are talking and listening to people, because that's a fundamental problem that's going on in Washington, D.C. The elected officials aren't listening to people. We saw the healthcare debate. We were campaigning during the healthcare debate. People were turning out in droves at the town hall meetings, in droves, telling their elected officials, this is not sound policy. This is not the policy of America. Big government takeover of health insurance is not American policy that we can stand for or can we afford. So we oppose it because of the financial implications that it's going to have on the private sector. You're seeing that already occur. You see it with the 1099 requirement from businesses to businesses. That administrative burden is going to put a true cost on the private sector. You're also seeing it now with 3.8% real estate tax transactions on real estate transactions. You're seeing it on quantifying health insurance programs under your W-2s in the near future. That cost cannot be acceptable because we cannot afford it. So we stand for repeal, but replacing it, because what we have to do is put back on the table, since Obamacare has been passed, the debate in healthcare is not occurring. I'm not hearing about the debate, and the fundamental issue that needs to be addressed is healthcare costs. Because the passage of Obamacare dealt with an insurance mandate and took care of some concerns of insurance reform, and that we stand in agreement on that. But it missed the mark. Healthcare costs has to be put back on the table, and while we address healthcare costs, we can deal with the insurance reforms that we're talking about here. So we're not going to turn our back on it and say it's not a fight to go forward with. We stand for repeal and replace with measures that are going to drive healthcare costs
Thank you,
down.
Mr. Reed.